The land had forgotten his name long before people did. Wind crossed the plains like a slow knife, cutting through dead grass and cracked soil, whispering stories no one bothered to remember anymore. The farmer lived there, alone, where the world ended and silence began. Years passed without a voice calling his name, without laughter, without the sound of another heartbeat sharing the same night air. He worked the land like a man paying a debt he didn't remember owing, plowing, planting, repairing fences that no one crossed, and burying memories he never spoke out loud. They said he had once been different, that he had laughed once, loved once. But the West had a way of taking things and never giving them back, until the day he rode into town for salt and seed, and came back with a life that would change his forever. Before this story goes any further, take a moment, subscribe to the channel, share this story with your friends, because stories like this were never meant to be forgotten. They were meant to be felt. The town was smaller than it used to be. Half-burned buildings leaned like tired men. The saloon smelled of dust and regret. That was where he heard it. Two traders talking in low voices, laughing like hyenas.
"She's the last one said. Apache woman.
Found her hiding near the canyon. No family, no tribe left." The farmer stood still, his hand tightened around the sack of grain. "Sheriff don't care," the other replied. "Says she's property now. Someone's got to pay for her upkeep." Property. That word struck harder than any bullet. He followed them outside without thinking. Near the stable stood a wagon. And inside it, sitting straight-backed, despite the rope around her wrists, was a woman whose eyes carried more history than the land itself. Dust streaked her face. Her dress was torn, but her posture was unbroken. She did not beg. She did not cry. She looked at the farmer, not with fear but with something sharper, defiance. He didn't know why he spoke, maybe because silence had already taken too much from him. How much? The traders grinned. He paid, not because he believed he owned her, but because he knew if he didn't, someone worse would. The ride back to the farm was quiet. The woman said nothing, neither did he. The wind did the talking. When they arrived, he cut the rope from her wrists and stepped back. "You're free," he said simply. "You can leave whenever you want." She didn't move. The land was empty, miles of nothing in every direction. "Why?" she finally asked. He didn't have an answer. Not one that made sense. So he said the truth, "Because I know what it's like to be left behind." That night, she slept inside. He slept outside, by the barn, like a guard who didn't trust himself. Days passed, then weeks. Her name was Naya. She spoke little, but when she did, her words were careful, like someone used to pain following honesty. She helped with the crops without being asked, fixed tools with skilled hands, sang softly at night, songs that sounded like prayers stitched with sorrow. He never touched her, he never raised his voice. And slowly something unfamiliar returned to the land, life. But the West never allows peace to last. One evening, riders appeared on the horizon. Armed men, the same traders, along with others who believed freedom could be undone with bullets. "She's still ours," they shouted. "Paper says so." The farmer stepped forward, rifle in hand, heart pounding. "She stays," he said. What followed wasn't a battle. It was a stand. Shots cracked the air. Dust rose. One man fell, another ran. The rest hesitated, seeing something they hadn't expected in a lonely farmer. Resolve. When it ended, the land was quiet again. But nothing was the same. Naya stood beside him, blood on her sleeve. Not hers. "You didn't have to," she said. He looked at her, then really looked. Not as someone he saved, not as someone he owned, but as someone who had chosen to stay. "I know," he replied. "I wanted to." That night the fire burned brighter, and the silence finally felt full instead of empty. Years earlier, Naya had believed the world ended the day her tribe fell. She had watched smoke swallow the sky, heard screams dissolve into gunfire, and learned that survival often meant becoming invisible. When she was captured, traded, renamed, she stopped believing in mercy. The farmer confused her. He didn't look at her like the others had. There was no hunger in his eyes, only loneliness that matched her own. She waited for the moment kindness would turn into ownership. It never did. Instead, he listened. When she spoke of her people, he didn't interrupt. When she wept at night, he pretended not to hear. When she asked questions about the land, he answered like a student, not a master. Slowly, trust replaced fear. One winter morning, she found him collapsed near the field, fever burning, breath shallow. She dragged him inside, nursed him with herbs she remembered from childhood, sat by his bed for days. When he woke, the first thing he saw was her hand holding his, not out of duty, out of choice. The town never accepted them. Whispers followed whenever they rode in together. Some called her bought, others called him mad. But seasons passed, crops grew, the farm flourished, and one evening, beneath a sky bruised purple and gold, she spoke words that carried the weight of generations. "My people believe souls travel together when they find peace," she said. "I think mine stopped running here." He swallowed hard. So did mine. They did not marry in a church. They did not seek approval. They built something quieter and stronger, a home. Years later, children would run through those fields, unaware of how close that land once came to swallowing two broken lives whole. They would hear stories, not of ownership but of choice, not of buying but of freedom. And the West, brutal and unforgiving as it was, would have to accept one truth it could never erase. Even in its darkest corners, humanity survived. The night after the gunfight, Reed did not bring sleep. The land stayed awake, listening. The farmer sat on the porch with his rifle across his knees, eyes fixed on the dark line where the plains met the sky. Every sound, the creak of wood, the sigh of wind through dry grass, felt like a warning. Violence had a way of echoing, and he knew men like those riders did not forget humiliation easily. Inside the house, Naya lay awake as well. She had wrapped the wound on her arm herself, refusing help, teeth clenched until the bleeding slowed. Pain was familiar. What unsettled her was something else entirely. The way the farmer had stepped forward without hesitation, the way he had chosen her again when the world tried to take her back. She rose quietly and stepped onto the porch. "You should sleep," he said without turning. "So should you." They stood together in silence, no promises, no explanations, just two people guarding the same fragile peace. If you're still here, still listening, take a second, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with your friends, because this is where survival turns into something deeper, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Morning brought consequences. The sheriff arrived before noon, dust-coated and tense. He dismounted slowly, eyes scanning the farm like he expected resistance to rise from the soil itself. "You killed 2 men," he said flatly. "They came armed," the farmer replied. "They fired first." The sheriff glanced at Naya, then looked away too quickly. "Paper says she's not free." The farmer stepped forward. "Paper lies." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the sheriff sighed, rubbed his face, and spoke low. "Town's changing. People, Don, want trouble. You keep her out of sight. I'll lose the papers." That was the closest thing to justice the West ever offered. After he left, the land exhaled. But freedom, Naya knew, was never permanent. It had to be defended. Not with guns alone, but with resolve. Winter came early that year. Snow dusted the fields like ash, covering scars without healing them. The farmer's cough worsened, and some mornings he struggled to rise from bed. Naya took over more of the work, feeding animals, chopping wood, checking traps. She moved with quiet authority, no longer a guest, not yet something else. One night the fever returned. He drifted between worlds, murmuring names she didn't recognize, reaching for hands that were no longer there. Naya stayed beside him, pressing cool cloths to his brow, whispering Apache prayers her grandmother once used for the dying. "Stay," she said softly. "The land still needs you." He woke days later, thinner, weaker, but alive, and something between them had shifted. Spring arrived with green shoots and rumors. Word spread of an Apache woman living freely on a white man's land. Some said she had bewitched him. Others said she'd stabbed men in their sleep. Fear dressed itself as gossip. One afternoon, a group rode up, settlers, not traders, families, nervous hands near holsters. "We don't want trouble," one man said, "but our wives are scared." Naya stepped forward before the farmer could speak. "I have no quarrel with you," she said evenly. "I grow food, I heal sickness, I bury the dead. That is all." Her voice carried strength without threat. The settlers left uneasy but unharmed. That night, the farmer watched her from the doorway, seeing not a woman rescued, but a leader reborn. "Why did you stay?" he finally asked. She considered him carefully. "Because you never tried to make me small." The words struck deeper than praise. Summer tested them. Drought cracked the earth. Crops failed across the county. Hunger sharpened tempers. When a neighboring farm lost a child to fever, Naya rode through the night with herbs and prayers. When cattle went missing, the farmer tracked them back and returned them without demand. Slowly, suspicion bent into respect. One evening, after a long day, they sat by the fire. Sparks rose like tiny stars. "In my tribe," Naya said, "we did not marry for ownership. We chose each other every day." He stared into the flames. "I don't know how to be chosen." She looked at him then, really looked, and placed her hand over his scarred one. "Then learn with me." The moment was quiet. No thunder, no vow, just truth settling where fear once lived. The past did not vanish. Sometimes Naya woke screaming, seeing flames where there were none. Sometimes the farmer froze at sudden sounds, hand reaching for a rifle that wasn't there. They learned each other's shadows and how to stand beside them without judgment. Years passed like that. The farm grew strong. Trees were planted where graves once might have been. Laughter returned, not loud but real. When the first child was born, the land felt it, like a heartbeat spreading through the soil. The town never fully accepted them, but it stopped trying to erase them. One evening, as the sun sank low, Naya stood on the porch, watching children chase fireflies. "The world tried to make me disappear," she said softly. "And failed," he replied. She shook her head. "No, it changed me. And then, it gave me this." She gestured to the land, the house, the life built from survival into choice. The farmer took her hand, not as a claim, not as a rescue, but as an equal. Out on the plains, the wind still whispered stories. But this one would not be forgotten. A farmer who lived alone for years, an Apache woman left behind. Two lives bought back from silence, not with ownership but with courage.